Welcome to the next session, schedules and tasks. So there are some certain steps you have to follow for creating schedules and even for creating tasks. A schedule can be configured to run once monthly, hourly, daily or yearly, wherever it is required or however it is required for your business process. To select the schedule's frequency, select the appropriate radio button so you have an option to choose it. The start date and time also can be configured. In addition to that, you have a frequency to choose whether it is once or it's going to be weekly, monthly. That is also be there, which you have to choose it in the form of a radio button. So after creating the schedules, you have to create the task to run with the current bot. So right click on the schedule name and select new task option. By default, it will be new task and new task one. It will keep on adding new task with the index in the suffix with 1, 2, 3, 4, so on. So you can rename it from the default one. Choose the process on completion on exception. So whatever it is required, once the process is completed, after completing that, what you have to do, whether your process need to go to end or it need to continue in doing any other process, you can define it there. Similar way, you have option to choose in case if your process goes exception, you can choose that corresponding activities. After that, you have to connect the process with the resource. So now coming up next, we are going to see in live how to create the task and how to connect the task to the resource. So now we are in Blue Prism with the control tab. So just click on the control icon or control tab which you have. Right click on the schedules tab under scheduler. And by default, you will have new schedule and the task also will be new scheduled name by default. So change it to like read temperature process VP007. And description, just mention whatever descriptions you want to mention. If you want to give some one line note, you can mention it there. And when you create a process, by default your first schedule task will be the initial task. So you have to define which will be your initial task. In case if you are using login agent, your login should be the first one. Login means unlocking your system. So if you're curious to know about what is login agent and all these things, login agent is one of the component which Blue Prism used to unlock your system when it is completely locked, which is using Windows L or so and so. It will unlock the system and it will perform list of activity which we have defined in our business process, and then it will lock back again. So it is locking and unlocking option where we use, which is a login agent. In case if you want to know more in detail about it, we will have the content in the portal. So now the first task after you create a scheduler will be new initial task, new task. So you have to define the first task. So here I'm going to define my first process to run. You can club multiple process to run in a sequence even in the scheduler. So it doesn't mean that only one process has to be triggered. You can give n number of process and that can be clubbed together in the task. So I'll give as like process 1, and on completion of this process 1, it need to go and pick the second process. On completion, on exception of this process, bot should terminate, bot should abort. So this is the condition. In case if you want to give any other process, you can click on the drop down, and you can click on the drop down, you will have list of process. You might be having a question why there is no process now in the drop down. Is like we don't have any other process. If you have any other process, you can click here. After completing the first process, you can click the second process, so that completion of first process will give a way to the second process to pick it and run. Same way here in exceptions as well. So mention it here and go to the folder and select the process, connect it to the resource which you want. So I have to connect it to this resource. As soon as you connect, you will have resource getting connected over here. So you have to do basically 3 activity. One is like you have to create a new schedule, and inside the schedule you have to create the task. After creating the task, you have to define completing of this process where it need to go, exception of this process where it need to go. Once you have defined that, now you have to open the folder process where it is, and then connect it to the relative resource. So this resource is going to be my process target. So just drag and drop it over here so that you will have a scheduled session which will get connected with the proper process name and resource name. So don't forget to apply the changes. If you forget, then it will be lost. Just click apply changes so that it will get stored the details which you have given. Now I haven't defined any frequency when to run and how it need to run, how frequent it need to run. So click back on the schedule name, and in the schedule name you have to define it is going to run only once, because I want to run only once. I don't want to run it repeatedly. If you want to run it more than once, you have to click hourly, minutely. You can click on the date, yearly, weekly, monthly. So you have options to choose in the form of a radio button. You can give that, and when you give hourly, you can be able to see the start date. You have to define the start date here and the time when it need to run. If it want to get expired, for example, if it need to run for this month alone, next month first it should get expired, you can give expires on as a future date so that it will get expired on so and so week, and the time also you can expire. So if you want to run it every hour, you can define, and if you want to run it every minute, that also you can be able to give. And if you want to run particularly in between some duration, like every day 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock only, if you want to run, so you can define that as well here, the time between from when to when it need to run. So next to that, as I defined in that initial section, or in the first section of the scheduler, you have option to define your calendar. Just click on the text box. You have working week and no holidays. So just like you, if you will have able to customize the option as well. You can be able to customize the calendar part. So if you have a new calendar which has been customized based on your business working days, you can be able to select that from the drop down as well. By default you have working week and no holiday calendar. So in case if you want to define based on your working location or zone area, like Asia Pacific, US, UK, or different holidays, you can define that. When you have to go to the settings, sorry, you have to save this and click on the settings. You have to go to calendar. You have an option to add the calendar here. Just add here. So whatever you want to add, you can add the calendar. You can create the new calendar as well, and then you can save this. You have a saving option. So you can customize your own calendar as well, and that can be configured into the scheduler. I don't want to save anything. That can be called into this calendar part. So that's how you have to create the new schedule and add the action item or add the task into the schedule, and configuring the bot to run, followed by that which process to run at what time. So that's pretty much on the scheduling part. Coming up next, we are going to see a lot in more detail with the other topics.